أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد، اللهم صل وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المكرمين الغرر الميامين، سيما مولانا ومقتدانا أسد الله الغالب علي بن أبي طالب أول المظلومين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا وإمام زماننا وصاحب نعمتنا وولي أمرنا مهدي هذه الأمة وطاووس أهل الجنة الحجة بن الحسن العسكري، فداه أرواح العالمين. برای تعجیل فرج آقا امام الزمان صلوات بلندی رو بفرستید. اللهم صل على محمد. Ali ibn Abi Talib, the commander of the faithful, the master of believers, was truly unique in the fact that if you know enough about him, you cannot help but fall in love with him. We love Ali because we all love virtue. We are drawn to Ali because we're all drawn to goodness. Ali ibn Abi Talib was a human personification of all that is good. And so I shall venture and say that there is no one on the face of the planet who wouldn't love Ali ibn Abi Talib unless they were a sociopath. A sociopath is someone who inflicts pain on others without recognizing the gravity of what they're doing. Isn't that the definition of a sociopath? A psychopath, a sadist, someone who is inherently evil, someone who cannot make the mental distinction between good and evil. If someone falls into that category, then I would understand if they didn't love Amir al-Mu'mineen. But if you're a normal human being, if you are someone who can make the distinction between right and wrong, good and evil, beautiful and ugly, if you can make those very basic distinctions, then you will love Ali ibn Abi Talib. And all it takes is a short introduction. All it takes is for you to get to know him. Brothers and sisters, let me say this. I, before anybody else, and we as a community have failed Amir al-Mu'mineen. You really don't need to exert too much effort to introduce the virtues and morals and beautiful dimensions of this unique character that is Ali ibn Abi Talib. It really isn't too difficult a task for us to invite people to the path of Ali, to the school of Ali. The problem is we have failed him. All it takes is one story. All it takes is to quote him. All it takes is to introduce him to your friends, to your co-workers, to people that you come across, even total strangers. It really isn't too hard. And you don't even have to come across as trying to proselytize, right? No one wants to be identified as a missionary, as a Jehovah's Witness, as someone knocking on doors and trying to preach your faith. You don't have to come across as being preachy. It's a story about Ali ibn Abi Talib. Who wouldn't enjoy a story about heroism? Who wouldn't marvel at the beauty that is Ali ibn Abi Talib? Sadly, we have failed him. And tonight, I don't so much want to talk about the Imam himself. In other words, Ali, the man, as much as I want to talk about the culture of Ali. You see, Ali ibn Abi Talib isn't just a person, or at least he shouldn't be seen as a mere person, as a mere individual, as someone who lived his life. 63 years in total were spent on this earth, 1,300 and odd years ago. Ali ibn Abi Talib should be seen as a culture. Ali ibn Abi Talib should be seen as a civilization. Ali ibn Abi Talib should be seen as a religion. So the stories, the examples, the parables I will mention today are not meant to simply introduce the Imam as an individual who has faced his Lord over a millennium ago. At the end of the day, you and I will have to face our Lord. We'll have to be held to account. We'll have to answer to our actions. And so did Ali. So did Ali. I won't be asked about the actions of Ali. Ali will not be asked about my actions. The question is, am I able to coordinate my actions with his? Because I know, we all know, that the actions of Ali weren't just good or noble. They are the standard by which each and every one of our actions will be measured. Aliyun al-Mizan, the Holy Messenger of Allah says. Ali is a scale. You use a scale exactly why? A scale is used to measure the weight of other objects. He is the benchmark. He is the unit by which we're all measured, by which we're all gauged. And so when we think of Amir al-Mu'mineen, we should think of how I will measure up against him. If they brought my prayers on the Day of Judgment and they put them on the scale of the prayers of Ali ibn Abi Talib, how do you think we'll fare? How do you think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will evaluate my prayers? Ali used to pray, brothers and sisters, and then fall to his face like a stiff, long dead, cold corpse. The fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would make him fall unconscious. Can I measure my prayers against the prayers of Amir al-Mu'mineen? Is there any comparison at all? Can my prayers even be called prayers when we think of the salat of Ali ibn Abi Talib? When they measure my fasting against the benchmark that is the fasts of Ali ibn Abi Talib, how do you think they'll fare? There's a hadith that's reported where the Imam says that if a man who is fasting, listen carefully, a person who is fasting, if he looks at a woman, not to admire, quote unquote, her beauty, not to lust over her physical attraction, but simply to measure how tall she is. The hadith says, لَمْ يُؤْجَرْ عَلَى صِيَامِهِ. Don't expect any rewards from Allah for that fast. Looking at a woman to measure her height. What are you doing measuring her height for? Why exactly do you feel obligated to measure the height of this woman, or to look at her dress, or to enjoy her beauty? What are you doing that while fasting? What are you thinking? The hadith says, لَمْ يُؤْجَرْ عَلَى صِيَامِهِ. Yeah, you fast because you have to fast, but don't expect Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to elevate your status in paradise because I fasted on a hot day. Don't expect any rewards. So now, take our fasts and compare them against the benchmark of Ali ibn Abi Talib. The point of this whole talk, brothers and sisters, is that for us to make any progress in life, to stop stagnating the way I am right now, to actually make some headway so that by the time you reach the age of 40, you say to yourself, well, I'm a better person today than I was when I was 20. Sadly, most of the time it's the other way around, isn't it? Allahu Akbar. We grow older and then we think, hang on a second, I was a better person when I was younger. When I was 15, I'd be excited to go to the mosque. I'd go to the masjid and remember the hadith that a believer inside the masjid is like a fish in the water. And look at me today. I can't even be bothered going to the mosque anymore. I can't even be bothered listening to a speech or a majlis or a sermon. I can't be bothered to go to the Friday prayers. I can't be bothered to go to ziyarah. When I was younger, I was filled with enthusiasm. I was actually a more moral person in my everyday life. Mali kullama kabura sunni, Imam al-Abidin says. Why is it that the older I get, the worse I become, and the more difficult it gets for me to turn around and to be a better person? I'm better than this. You are better than that. The only way we can make some real progress, brothers and sisters, is for us to listen to these stories tonight and make a commitment that that is my benchmark, that is my scale. Ali ibn Abi Talib is my leader. Let me be a better person by following in his footsteps, by following his example. Yes, Ali ibn Abi Talib might be 1,000,000,000 miles ahead of me, but at least let me make sure that I'm on the same road as Ali ibn Abi Talib. At least maybe let me make sure that I'm moving in the right direction as opposed to going backward. Of course I'll never reach the status of Ali. This is one of those misconceptions that sometimes you might have heard. Oh, we'll never be the same as Imam Ali, so let me be whoever I am. Of course you'll never be Ali. Of course you'll never be Fatima. But at least be on the same path as Ali and Fatima. At least make headway. So who was Ali ibn Abi Talib? Let me mention a few examples. Some of them you might have heard before, some of them might be new. But the point of it all is, measure yourself against that benchmark. This is how Ali treats his enemies. The question is, how do you treat your friends? How do you treat your family members? How do you treat your relatives? This is how Ali treats his enemies. I'll give you two very quick examples. In the battle of Jamal, Ibn Abi al-Hadid al-Mu'tazili, who was a Sunni, not a Shia, he wrote a commentary on Nahj al-Balagha, a very famous commentary. Ibn Abi al-Hadid says, I am amazed every time I read the story of Jamal, how they drew their swords and struck the face of Ali and the faces of his companions, and yet when they asked for clemency, Ali put down his sword. ضربوا بسيوفهم وجه علي ووجه أصحابه, he says, لكن علي ألقى سيفه حين طلبوا منه السلم حين استسلموا. When they came begging for mercy, they had killed Imam Ali's friends. They had killed his companions. Not just that, but if you think about it, the Battle of Jamal, Battle of the Camel, was the most detrimental and the most destructive battles that Imam Ali had to face during his entire life. Why? Because it paved the way for every subsequent battle. Because it gave the people the audacity, the evildoers, it gave them the audacity to raise their swords and their spears in the face of Amir al-Mu'mineen. If Ali ibn Abi Talib wanted to seek revenge, he had every right to seek revenge in the Battle of the Camel after he won. But you know what he did? He went to the leader of the enemy army. She was hiding on top of a camel. After the camel fell to the ground, the Imam went to her. Before he could speak, she said to him, Ya Ali, malakta fa asjah. Oh Ali, you've won now. You're the victor. Please have mercy on me. I know what I have done. I have caused the deaths of 15,000 innocent souls. I've done that, I know. But now that you're the victor, now that you've won, have mercy on me. Do you know what Imam Ali said? He said, قَدْ فَعَلْتَ. I've already done so. You will get nothing but mercy and clemency from me. Not only that, the Imam then took her. He took 40 women, dressed them up like warriors, like men, had each one of those women put on a mask to cover their face so no one could tell that this is a woman. And he entrusted the leader of the enemy army to these 40 women who looked like men and said, take her back to her home in safety. Why did he send women instead of men? Because by the time she got to her destination, she then went around saying, oh, look at what Ali ibn Abi Talib did. Ali ibn Abi Talib wouldn't protect my shame and he wouldn't guard the fact that I am the wife of the Prophet. He sent 40 strangers, 40 men with me. And so all the women then took off their masks. They said, no, Ali ibn Abi Talib didn't do that. He sent women to protect you. But he had us dress up like men so that no one would think about attacking the caravan. That's the Battle of Jamal. The second example is the Battle of Siffin. When Imam Ali reached the battlefield, which is near the city of Raqqa, which is today the capital of ISIS, this evil demonic group that has hijacked the name of Islam. When the Imam reached that location, Muawiyah had already taken hold of the entire perimeter. One of the things that he had done, as is so characteristic of Muawiyah and Bani Umayyah, he had taken over all the water sources, all the water wells, and he told the army of Ali ibn Abi Talib that you get no access to water. If you're going to fight, then fight like a man. Why do you have to stoop to this low level whereby you would prevent people from drinking water? Muawiyah said no. They said to Muawiyah, if you do this now, no one knows what's going to happen in the course of the battle. What if Ali ibn Abi Talib is able to conquer our side of the territory and take over the water wells? He's not going to give us water. He will do to us exactly as we've done to him. He said, oh no, you don't know Ali ibn Abi Talib. I got nothing to lose here. So they came to Amir al-Mu'mineen. They said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we don't have water. We've just arrived. We're thirsty. We're dying here. The Imam said to them, "Urwu siyufakum min ad-dima' turwu min al-ma'." You want to drink water? Then you're going to have to fight your way to those water wells. So the war erupts. They begin to fight. Sure enough, the soldiers of Amir al-Mu'mineen, taking lead from their master, their Imam, who was always at the very forefront. Ali ibn Abi Talib, unlike 99% of every leader out there, he wouldn't send soldiers into the battlefield to fight his wars. He was always at the very forefront. He was a soldier before being a general. And so taking lead from their Imam, they went into the battlefield, they fought, they were able to recapture the water. Then they went to Muawiyah, his friends. They said to him, see what we told you. Now Ali ibn Abi Talib has all the water and he's not going to give us a drop of it. He said, again, I told you, you don't know Ali ibn Abi Talib as well as I do. Go ask him for water. Imam Ali's own soldiers Some of them, they went up to him, they said to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, اقتلهم بسيف العطش. Kill them with the sword of thirst. They've killed our friends. In order to recapture the water wells, some of us got killed, some of us were injured. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, now that we have the upper hand, let's destroy them, just as they did to us. Revenge, an eye for an eye. Amir al-Mu'mineen said, no, give them the water. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, why? The Imam said, the difference between me and Muawiyah is I can play games. I can play tricks. I can do exactly what Muawiyah does. It's not that I don't know how to play politics. But I am afraid of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. My piety prevents me from playing the game the way Muawiyah does. And so he gave them a share of the water. That's how Ali ibn Abi Talib treats his enemies. My question to you again, brothers and sisters, as a believer, as a lover of Ali, as a Shia of Ali, how do you treat your own brothers and sisters? Isn't it shameful when I come across someone who says, yeah, it's been 15 years, I haven't even spoken to my brother or sister. I haven't spoken to my cousin in a long time because of some family feud or some problem that happened. Qat'ur rahim. And we're both lovers of Ali ibn Abi Talib. We both claim to be his partisans. This is how Ali treats his enemies. Let's start to treat each other with a little more kindness and compassion. Let's remember what Ali would do. Let's remember what Amir al-Mu'mineen would do. After the battle of Jamal, Amir al-Mu'mineen even prevented his soldiers from taking any war booty, any spoils of war. So you know how after a battle, you have the right to go and to pick up any weapons that have been left over, anything that's left over by the enemy soldiers? It's acceptable in Islam if the battle itself, if the war itself is legitimate, especially one where Amir al-Mu'mineen is the commander. And yet the Imam said, absolutely not. You do not touch any of the spoils of this war. Leave them. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib. And yet sometimes, brothers and sisters, when we ourselves fight amongst ourselves, it's like there are no limits to the savagery. There are no limits to the things that we say to each other. There are no limits to the things that we would do to each other. Are we not all followers of Amir al-Mu'mineen? So that's two examples within the area of how Ali presented us with a culture of how to treat our enemies, let alone our friends. The second example is in Ali's asceticism, his complete and utter disregard to the pleasures of this world. The Imam says in his letter to Uthman ibn Hanif in Nahj al-Balagha, it's a beautiful letter that any person with a responsibility or an elected post or position within a community or a country must read. The Imam says to his governor to Basra, the Imam had heard that his governor had been accepting invitations to banquets and functions, especially those that were being offered by rich members of the community. You know how it is, right? When you're a politician, someone rich, someone important, someone significant invites you to a banquet, you accept the invitation. Why? Because you need those connections, you need the donations, you need the money, but not Ali ibn Abi Talib, and not someone who works in the government of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Uthman ibn Hanif has been accepting invitations to functions. The Imam writes a letter to him, admonishing him. And then in that letter, the Imam says to him, أَأَقْنَعُ أَن يُقَالَ لِي أَمِيرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. Am I satisfied because I've been given the title, people address me as the commander of the faithful, and yet people are hungry around me? Am I like an animal, the Imam says, who is tied up, a domesticated animal? Hammuha alafuha, all it cares about is its food. Is that who we are now? Are we human beings or are we animals, the Imam says? He says, am I like an animal? All I care about is food. There was this atheist who wrote a book. And in the book he says that theists and believers accuse us atheists of not having a purpose in life. Of course I have a purpose in life. He says, when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I think about is breakfast. So I go and have my breakfast. I have my pancakes, I have my coffee, I have breakfast. And then I think about going to work. So I go to work and I carry out my functions. I get paid as a result of that work. I take the money, I go back home, I have dinner, then I go to sleep. Every once in a while I go to the theater, I go watch a Broadway play, I go do this and I go do that. And I'm sitting there thinking, is this guy for real? I have a purpose in life, therefore I wake up in the morning and I think about breakfast? And I think about lunch and I think about dinner? Is that your purpose in life? Is that my purpose in life? Really, what is your purpose in life? What is it that you aim to do? If somebody asked you, what do you want to do when you grow up? Say you're young. What the sorts of answers that you give, brothers and sisters, tell you a great deal about the kind of person that you are. What is it that truly matters in life? Ali ibn Abi Talib says, أَأَقْنَعُ أَنْ يُقَالَ لِي أَمِيرُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And yet, there are people hungry. وَفِي الْحِجَازِ أَوْ الْيَمَامَةِ مَنْ لَا عَهْدَ لَهُ بِالشَّبْعِ وَلَا طَمَعَ لَهُ فِي قُرْصٍ وَلَوْ شِئْتُ لَاهْتَدَيْتُ هَذَا السَّبِيلِ. If I wish, the Imam says, I could find the source of this grain. I could get to the worms that make this silk. In other words, I have access. I have the power to live a comfortable life. I can find the gold, I can find the silver, I can enjoy myself. وَلَكِنْ هَيْهَاتٍ. But I shall never do that, because there might be someone in the corner of my government who is hungry tonight. Someone who doesn't remember the last time they had a good square meal. هَيْهَاتٍ أَنْ يَغْلِبَنِي جَشَعِي. هَيْهَاتٍ. I shall never let my desire win over me, control me. Never lose sight of the prize. Never lose sight of the fact that you are not an animal, the Imam teaches us in this portion of the letter. You're not an animal. It's not just about fun, food, happiness, joy, or what we often refer to as happiness and joy, which is really nothing. It's just the satisfaction of immediate carnal desires is what it is. Remember that you're a human. Remember there's more to life than this. The Imam says, do I feel content that they call me Amir al-Mu'mineen and yet there is so much injustice out there? Well, let me ask you this. Do I feel content that they call me Maulana and there is so much injustice out there? Do you feel content that people call you doctor or engineer and there is so much injustice out there? There's so many orphans out there in Afghanistan, so many orphans in Iraq, so much poverty where we come from. How much do we care? When was the last time we adopted an orphan? So this is another example from Ali's asceticism and complete disregard. Let me give you one more. Ibn Abbas comes to Ali ibn Abi Talib, to Amir al-Mu'mineen. He says to him, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, we have a very important delegation who is here and they're here to meet you. Remember who Ali was? Ali was the emperor of the most powerful country on earth at that time. It encompassed over 50 of today's countries. 50, not states, countries. And yet he's there sitting in his tent and is fixing his broken sandal, his broken shoe. So Ibn Abbas walks in. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. Ibn Abbas was like the chief of staff. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, there's a delegation waiting for you. It's an important delegation. They're here to talk to you. So the Imam continues to fix his shoe. Ibn Abbas goes back outside, comes back inside. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, it's an important matter that you have to attend to. What are you doing? So the Imam looked at him. He said to him, Ya Ibn Abbas, ma qimatu hadhihi andak? How much do you think this shoe is worth? A worn out, old, broken shoe. How much is it worth? Ibn Abbas was shocked. What kind of a question is that, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen? I don't know. Nothing. It's worth nothing. If you gave it for free to someone, he wouldn't take it. The Imam looked at him. He said to him, this whole government, this authority, this thing that you call my kingdom is worth less to me than this broken, old, worn out shoe. In another hadith, the Imam says to him, this whole kingdom that you have entrusted me with, this entire government, this power that I have is worth less in my eyes, listen carefully, to the mucus that is discharged from the nose of a goat when it sneezes. Disgusting, right? Well, that's how Ali ibn Abi Talib looks at his own dominion. Now, if I'm not a king, if I'm not a president, if I'm not a prime minister, I would use this kind of language to describe the government, right? I'd say, clear the swamp, right? Because I think of it as a swamp. It's the disgusting place where all the worms, all the dirty stuff come together. But when I'm the president, when I'm the king, when I'm the emperor, no one talks about their own dominion like that. And yet Ali ibn Abi Talib says, you see that mucus that comes out of the nostrils of a sneezing goat? That to me is worth more than this entire thing. إِلَّا أَنْ أُقِيمَ عَدْلًا, unless I am able to uphold justice and defeat oppression. If that happens, if I'm able to do that, then it's worth something. Otherwise, it's worth nothing to me. That's Ali ibn Abi Talib. Next time, when you have power, whether that power be you being the man of the house, or that power happens to be you having a position within the community or the wider community, always remember this. Whatever it is you think you have, whether it's a thriving business that's making you millions of dollars or a little family unit, whatever it is, it's worth nothing unless you're able to be righteous and act in a moral way. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. One more example of how Ali ibn Abi Talib collapsed every time he saw someone poor, someone who was oppressed, someone who was an orphan. Allahu Akbar. Amir al-Mu'mineen was the one who not once did he shiver or shake when faced with an army of thousands. He never even skipped a beat when he saw Amr ibn Widd al-Amiri, Farisu Yalyal, who could kill 1,000 people with his bare hands. Ali didn't even skip a beat. And yet whenever he saw an orphan child, he would collapse. All that strength, all that valor, all that power. Ali ibn Abi Talib would lose it in an instance of seeing someone who's oppressed, someone who is poor. A woman who has come asking him to intervene, to act as an arbiter, to speak to her oppressive, abusive husband because she'd been thrown out of the house. Ali ibn Abi Talib couldn't stand something like that. He would run to her help. He would jump at the opportunity to help someone who was oppressed and someone who was less fortunate. I'll give you one example which breaks every heart. One day, Amir al-Mu'mineen is walking in the street when he notices a woman carrying a jug of water on her shoulder without anyone helping her. And so the Imam rushes towards this woman. Again, this is when the Imam was Khalifatul Muslimin, Imamul Muttaqeen. When he was Amirul Mu'mineen, he rushes to help, to lend a helping hand to this woman who's carrying this weight on her shoulder. So the Imam offers to help her. She gives it to him. As soon as the Imam carries the jug of water, other people who recognized the Imam, companions and whatnot, they came up to him. Qambar, he came up to the Imam. Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, da'ni ahmil anka hamlak. Let me carry this for you. You're an old man. All your beard is turned gray. Let me carry this for you. The Imam said to him, who's going to carry my load on the day of judgment for me? Let me carry it. So the Imam carried it. He walked with this woman. He said to her, what's your story, my sister? Ya Amat Allah, O servant of Allah, what's your story? Why is it that you're carrying this on your own and there's no one to help you? Where is your husband? She said to him, she didn't know, she didn't recognize the Imam, by the way. She said to him, I was married, but Ali ibn Abi Talib sent my husband to a battle, to one of the wars, whether it was with Muawiyah or the Jamal or whatever, and my husband got killed. So now I'm left with orphans and no one to help me. So what I do is that I now work at people's homes as a maid. That's what I do. Allahu Akbar. Ali ibn Abi Talib took the water to her doorstep, left it there, said goodbye, went back home. It is reported that that entire night Amir al-Mu'mineen did not sleep for a second. Early in the morning, Ali ibn Abi Talib gets up. He takes a food basket, fills it with all the food that he could get his hands on, with some wheat, some dough, some dates, and he rushes to this woman's house. He knocks at the door. Who is it? He said, I'm the same stranger that helped you last night. I've got some food for you. Again, he doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't say who he is. She opens the door. He said, may I come into your home and help you? Maybe feed the children, feed the orphans. She said, sure. As soon as the Imam steps in, she said to him, thank you, but may God hold Ali ibn Abi Talib to account on the day of judgment. Look at me. I'm an abandoned old widow. I have nothing. Ali ibn Abi Talib doesn't even think of me, but thank you very much for helping. At that point, any one of us would have said something. At that point, you think that the Imam would say, I am Ali ibn Abi Talib, here I am. But no. The Imam says to her, what would you like me to do? Would you like to cook the food or play with the kids? She said to him, no, I'm better at cooking food. How about you keep the kids occupied while I cook? So Amir al-Mu'mineen went to the kids. Listen to this. They say that the Imam would fall to the ground on his 2 hands and feet, carry the kids on his back and act like an animal, like a ride, played with the kids. And he then went, when the food was prepared, he took the food and he would come and feed the children with his 2 hands. Allahu Akbar. Every time he put a bite in their mouth, he would say, my son, my sweetheart, ask Allah to forgive Ali ibn Abi Talib. اجعل عليا في حل. They say that the Imam wanted to help light the fire in the furnace and the oven. So when he lit the fire, suddenly there was some oxygen, excess oxygen or whatever it was. So the fire kind of got close to Imam Ali's face. They say the Imam said, ذُقْ يَا Ali. Ali, you should taste this fire. This is what you get for abandoning widows and orphans. He played with the kids and played with the kids until they had their food. As they're having their food, one of that woman's neighbors, another woman, she walks in on her. She recognizes Amir al-Mu'mineen. As soon as she recognized him, she went to that widow. She said to her, do you know who this is? هذا أمير المؤمنين, هذا علي ibn Abi Talib. He's playing with your kids and he's feeding them. So the woman rushed to the Imam. Imagine after saying what you have said. She's filled with shame. She runs to the Imam. She said to him, Wa haya'i minka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen. I am so ashamed of you, O Commander of the Faithful. The Imam responds, Bal wa haya'i minki ya Amat Allah. I am filled with shame, O servant of Allah. This is Ali ibn Abi Talib. Now, I wanted to talk about some of the friends of Ali, some of the companions of Ali. Perhaps we've run out of time. Maybe tomorrow, inshallah, we'll talk about them. But it was these noble examples that produced the likes of Malik al-Ashtar. It was these stances that Ali ibn Abi Talib exhibited. His heroism on the battlefield and yet his clemency when he won. And when he dealt a blow of defeat to his enemies. It was his courage, and yet, at the same time, the fact that he would break down whenever he saw an orphan or a child or someone in need that produced the likes of Malik al-Ashtar. The culture of Ali that we've been talking about, brothers and sisters, produced the likes of Malik. Who was Malik? Let me make this very brief. Malik was the equivalent of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, reported only to the commander of the faithful. That's how important he was. Malik was so powerful, Malik was so great, that when he stepped into the battlefield of Siffin, they say that both Muawiyah and Amr ibn al-As began shaking in fear, because they knew that Malik's entrance into the equation is going to change the dynamics of the entire battle. Malik was the one who was about to defeat Muawiyah's army had it not been for Amir al-Mu'mineen summoning him back. You all know what happened, right? So Malik, the Imam, when Malik was killed later on, the Imam said something about him which it really mesmerizes me. The Imam said, "Kana li kama kuntu li Rasulillah." Malik was to me like I was to the Messenger of Allah. How was Ali ibn Abi Talib to the Messenger of Allah? Absolute obedience. Absolute devotion. Dedicated to nothing other than the pleasure and the protection of Rasulullah. Malik was the same to Amir al-Mu'mineen. To the point that when Malik was close to reaching the tent of Muawiyah in the battle. Imagine if Malik had killed Muawiyah. If Muawiyah had been killed, then the other subsequent battles that followed after that would never have happened. Then Imam al-Hassan would not have been forced into the peace treaty. Then Imam al-Hussein would not have been killed in Karbala, because Yazid would have never have seen the Khilafah, right? Imagine. Malik al-Ashtar gets to a point where he's only a stone throw away. In fact, the way he described it was an arrow throw away to the tent of Muawiyah. Amir al-Mu'mineen sends him a message. The message is, "Come back, I want you to retreat." "Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, I'm only an arrow throw away from the tent. Come back." Malik al-Ashtar rushes back to his master, Amir al-Mu'mineen. No questions asked. The Imam says so, I submit. Is this how we are, brothers and sisters? When it comes to matters of religion, when it comes to the teachings and instructions of Ali ibn Abi Talib, is this how we are? Is it enough for us to say, Ali did this, or Ali said this? Or do we have to introduce our own ideas and thoughts and opinions as well? Is religion that flexible that I can decide what I want to do without regard to what Amir al-Mu'mineen would have done or what he has said? That's the kind of person Malik was. Now listen to this. This is the culture of Ali versus the culture of Muawiyah, the culture of Bani Umayyah. One day, Malik al-Ashtar is wearing his very indescript clothes. You couldn't really tell him apart from anyone else, like Amir al-Mu'mineen. He's walking down the marketplace. There's a group of young thugs. In Britain, they call them rude boys, right? Just a bunch of good-for-nothing nobodies who are sitting there trying to have a laugh, like some people are, unfortunately. And as they're sitting down, they see this elderly man who's walking by himself, his head lowered to the ground, not giving any regard to his surroundings. One of them grabs a piece of garbage from some of the leftover vegetables that were there on the street. He holds it and he hurls it against Malik al-Ashtar. It hits his head. Malik al-Ashtar doesn't even look at them. He continues walking. So obviously those guys, they start laughing, their neighbors laugh. One of the shop owners overheard the laughter. So he came outside, he said, "What had happened?" Someone said, "Yeah, we saw this old guy and we kind of just have fun with him. We threw something at him." He looked at him, he said, "Do you know who that is? That is Malik al-Ashtar. That is the most powerful general in the army of Amir al-Mu'mineen. Do you know what you've done?" So the one who had hurled that dirt at Malik al-Ashtar runs after him. He notices Malik going into a masjid. He goes inside the masjid, Malik al-Ashtar is praying. Oh my God, those few minutes that have passed. God only knows what he thought Malik would do to him after the end of his prayer. He waits, shaking, shivering, skipping heartbeats. As soon as Malik al-Ashtar finishes his prayer, he goes up to him. I am sorry, I apologize. Afwan, u'udhurni, samihni. Malik al-Ashtar said to him, I actually wasn't coming into the masjid. But when you did this to me, I decided to come into the masjid to pray 2 raka'at because I heard Rasulullah say, and quoted by Amirul Mu'mineen, Man salla rak'atayn, whoever prays 2 raka'at, he has a prayer that will be accepted. You can ask for something after that salah and Allah will grant you your wish. So I said, I will pray 2 raka'at and my prayer, my request to Allah will be for you to be forgiven. That's the only reason I came here. I've already forgiven you. I'm asking God to forgive you now. Go on your way, it's okay. This is the culture of Ali. What about the opposite culture? Ziyad ibn Abih was a governor appointed by Muawiyah on the city of Kufa. One day he's on the mimbar, he's giving a sermon. The mosque is packed with people. Someone throws a seed from a date palm. How small is a seed? Tiny little seed. He throws that seed at Ziyad ibn Abi. Ziyad feels insulted. He doesn't know who threw that seed. For all he knew, it could have been just a child. We don't know who. He says, who threw that seed? No one says anything. They know what a tyrant he is. Who threw the seed? No one dares say anything. He says, close off all the doors of the masjid. They seal all the doors. He says, let me see. The general vicinity of where the seed came from was probably this area. How many people are in this area? 70 people. I want you to pluck all of their eyeballs out of their skulls. 70 people's eyeballs were gouged because this vicious, demonic ancestor of Daesh, a product of the culture of Muawiyah, was insulted because someone threw a seed at him. This is the enemy of Ali. Malik is the friend of Ali. Which are you? خب دیگه بحث رو جمع کنیم. شب سختی گذشت برای اهل بیت امیر المؤمنین. شبی است که مولا امیر المؤمنان دیگه مسجد کوفه نمیرن، صدای دلنشینشون رو کسی نمیشنفه. شبی است که دیگه صدای اذان علی ابن ابی طالب دیگه شنیده نمیشه. اذانی گفتند اون شب 19 ماه مبارک رمضان، میگن که تمام اهل کوفه، هر کسی که تو کوفه بود اون شب با صدای دلنشین و زیبای علی از خواب بیدار شد. الله اکبر، الله اکبر، الله اکبر، الله اکبر، اشهد ان لا اله الا الله، اشهد ان لا اله الا الله. این صدا رو دیگه امشب نشنیدم. خب دکتر آوردن، حکیم آوردن، این حکیم بیاد ببینه مولامون، بابامون حالش چطوره، حالش خوبه یا خوب نیست. حکیم میگه که شیر برای مولا امیر مؤمنان خوبه، چیز دیگه ای به ایشون ندید، اما شیر براشون خوبه. آقا نمیدونی این خبر آنچنان تو کوفه پیچید، یهو نگاه کردن دیدن همه اومدن، هر کدوم با دستش یک کاسه شیر گرفته دم در خانه مولا امیر المؤمنین. خوب که نگاه کردن دیدن همه ایتام کوفه اومدن جمع شدن، هر کدوم اومده گفته من برای مولام شیر آوردم، من برای بابام شیر آوردم. امیر المؤمنین فرمود به امام حسن، گفت که برید همه کاسه هایی که اینا آوردن از دستشون بگیرید، نذارید کسی با دلش شکسته برگرده به خونه بگه من این شیری که آوردم آقا از من نگرفت. الله اکبر. حالا تو هم امشب بگو یا امیرالمؤمنین، بابا جان ما یتیم شماییم، ما اومدیم با کاسه اشک چشامونو تقدیم شما میکنیم، همین که برای شما و اولاد شما گریه میکنیم، ما رو هم نذارید با دل شکسته برگردیم. هر حاجتی که داریم و مهمترین اون حاجات هم تعجیل فرج آقا امام زمان ماست. نذارید ما با دل شکسته برگردیم. خب بعد حضرت فرمودن که همه کاسه ها رو ازشون بگیرید، شیر رو ازشون بگیرید، درم باز کنید، هر کی میخواد بیاد داخل بذار بیاد. آقا شما که حالتون بده، مریضید، فرقتون شکافته، حضرت فرمودن نه بذار هر کی میخواد بیاد بیاد. آقا همشون ریختن تو خونه مولا امیرالمؤمنین. اول همین ایتام بودن، یتیما بودن، بابای ماست، همه وارد خونه که شدن. راوی میگه حضرت امیر در اون حالی که داشت، الله اکبر، محاسنش از خون سرش خضاب شده بود، سرخ شده بود. همه که همینطور وارد خونه که شدن، وارد اتاق امیرالمؤمنین حجرشون که شدن، دیدن حضرت با اون حال بدی که داشت فرمودن سلونی قبل ان تفقدونی، بپرسید، سوالی دارید، مسئله دارید، هر چی که دارید، حاجتی دارید بگید، اما خب خففوا علی امامکم. این کلمه رو آقا امیرالمؤمنان بارها و بارها گفته بودن رو منبر، جاهای مختلف، که اگه سوالی دارید از من بپرسید قبل از اینه که منو از دست بدید. ولی این دفعه که اینو فرمودن، حضرت فرمود که خففوا علی امامکم، یه خورده سخت نگیرید، حال منو که میبینید چقدر خرابه. الله اکبر. بله، میگویند که امیرالمؤمنین وقتی به زمین افتاد، حضرت با صدای معروفش داد زد بسم الله و بالله و علی ملت رسول الله فزت و رب الکعبه. بله، قربان آن پسرت یا امیرالمؤمنین که همین حرف زد. تو صحرای کربلا سید الشهدا روی اسب بود، وقتی آن تیر هرمله در دلش نشست، حضرت فرمود بسم الله و بالله و علی ملت رسول الله. مولای من، آقای من امیرالمؤمنین، اما یه فرقی بین شما و آقازادتون هست. شما وقتی به زمین افتادی تو بغل امام حسن افتادی، ولی سید الشهدا با صورت روی زمین افتاد. همه بگیر حسین حسین. امیرالمؤمنین چشماشونو باز کردن، دیدن امام حسن مجتبی داره گریه میکنه، قطرات اشک امام حسن مجتبی بود. امیرالمؤمنین چشمشونو باز کردن، فرمودن پسرم حسن گریه نکن جانم. پدر جان چطور گریه نکنم؟ فرمود پسرم این است رسول الله، این است فاطمه زهرا مادرت، این است حمزه سید الشهدا، اینها همه آمدند به من میگن که بیا یا علی، خیلی خسته شدی یا امیرالمؤمنین، دیگه الان امیرالمؤمنین میخواد راحت شه. الله اکبر. حضرت فرمود وقتی به شما میگفتم که بیایید جنگ، هوا سرد بود میگفتید هوا سرده، اگه هوا گرم بود میگفتید هوا گرمه، هی بهونه واسه خودتون در میارید. خدایا بذار من از اینا راحت شم، خدایا جون علی رو بگیر از اینا، بذار خودشونم راحت شن. امشب دیگه اون آدما راحت میشن از امیرالمؤمنین. میدونی چطوری؟ همونطوری که از فاطمه زهرا راحت شدن، میگفتن که این گریه های زهرا رو ما تحمل نمی کنیم، یا علی بذار یا شب گریه کنه یا روز گریه کنه، دیگه حوصلمون سر رفت. حالا امشب دیگه اینا از علی هم راحت میشن، امشب علی هم از اونا راحت میشه. حضرت امام حسن مجتبی با امام حسین با بقیه اولاد امیرالمؤمنین همه جمع شدن، با سختی امیرالمؤمنین رو بلند کردن، رفتن به طرف خانه. ای جانم به فدایت یا امیر المؤمنین، تو امروز دستتو بیذاری رو شونه امام حسن. یه روزی هم بود که فاطمه زهرا دست گذاشت رو شونه امام حسن. ای جانم به فدایت ای امام مجتبی، چه مصیبت هایی که تو دیدی مولای من. حالا دیگه حرکت میکنن به طرف خانه. نزدیک خونه که میرسن امیر المؤمنین میفرماید که بذارید دیگه از اینجا به بعد و من با پای خودم برم. چرا یا امیر المؤمنین؟ میگه من نمیخوام زینب منو تو این حال ببینه. بذارید با پای خودم من برم. میرن به طرف خانه، زنها میان بیرون، حضرت زینب کبرا میاد، تا چشمش میخوره به امیر المؤمنین یک گریه ای میکنه که خود مولا امیر المؤمنین هم میزنه زیر گریه. امیر المؤمنین گریه میکنه، امام حسن گریه میکنه، امام حسین گریه میکنه، همه گریه میکنن. ولی من میگم یا امیر المؤمنین، اون روز شما همه گریه کردید، بقیه اومدن برای شما تسلیت کردن، ولی کجا بودی شما در شام وقتی اون نیزه بلند و آوردم بالا؟ زینب کبرا نگاهی کرد، دید سر برادر سید الشهدا روی نیزه است. تا خواست گریه کنه میزدنش، تا گریه میکرد. هر کدوم از خانما از این زنها گریه میکرد، میمدن و اونها رو کتک میزدن. همه بگید مظلوم حسین، غریب یا ابا عبدالله، لكنما المرجع لله، إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون، والعاقبة للمتقين. اللهم إنا نسألك وندعوك باسمك العظيم الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم، يا الله 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 يا أرحم الراحمين. عجل اللهم لوليك الفرج، اللهم اجعلنا من أصحابه وأعوانه وشيعته ومقوية سلطانه. اللهم اقض حوائجنا، شاف مرضانا، اللهم احفظ علماءنا ومراجع الدين، اللهم احرس مراقد أئمة المسلمين، اللهم انصرنا على أعدائنا الدواعش الوهابين، اللهم وارحم موتانا ومن مضى من هذا الجمع والشهداء والصالحين، إلى أرواحهم وأرواح من مضى على الإيمان وعلى ولاية أمير المؤمنين. نهدي لهم ثواب مجلسنا هذا وثواب سورة المباركة الفاتحة مع الصلوات.